Welcome back to the Literacy Lounge, and we've got a really special edition this time because we have our first special guest with us. I'd like to introduce Jon Smedley from Teach Active. So hello, Jon.
Hello.
Thank you ever so much for coming on. It's going to be really great for us to chat about what you do with Teach Active, your beliefs around active learning, but also the English and maths side in the product. But I won't say it all. What I'll do is I'll hand over to you, and just to find out first a little bit more about you as a teacher to begin with, and also then what led you into setting up your company.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I started teaching in 2000, and I was a primary school teacher on the Wirral, and yeah, absolutely loved my job. But I was, as going through university, I had PE as my specialist subject, so that was always something I was really interested in, and getting the children moving and active more, and leading that throughout my school. And then a post came up, they don't exist anymore, but called a school sports coordinator.
Oh, is that one of those nice little secondments people used to get?
It was lovely. I wore a tracksuit every day and went into school and delivered lots of PE, so I loved it. And I worked again on the Wirral and kind of worked at out of a couple of secondary schools and supported primary schools in the local area. Loved that role, and then the role for the advisory teacher for PE for the Wirral came up. So kind of very, very similar role, but leading a lot of CPD for teachers about how they should be delivering PE. And
did you get to be in Acre Lane?
Acre Lane, yeah. Unfortunately, now a housing estate,
yes.
but that was where I delivered my courses in a sports hall with a leaking roof and a gymnasium with some dodgy bars at the side. Yeah.
So I think anyone from the Wirral listening, everyone's got a nice story and nice fond memories of going to Acre Lane. Really good lunches.
That was the main thing, I think. If people would come on, and as long as you gave them a good lunch, the evaluations would always be really good. So yeah, that was a role that I did for about 4 years, and I absolutely loved that. But I knew kind of with local authorities, it was maybe having to go back into school.
Yes.
So I went back as deputy head, and that was where, again, teaching and going into my year sixes, I really started with the active lessons and active learning again, which is, I'm sure we'll touch on a little bit more, but yeah, to inspire my children.
So apart from PE, what else did you like teaching as a primary teacher? Putting you on the spot there, though.
Oh, you are putting me on the spot, especially as soon as shall I say English?
Oh, you can say whatever you like.
Yeah, do you know what? I think one of the reasons I liked being a primary school teacher is the mix of teaching everything. Yeah. I would probably say I loved teaching English. I loved teaching maths. Those two courses. Science, maybe not so much. And music, you'd probably have a tough gig if you were in my class, because I'm tone deaf. So teaching music was probably a little bit of a struggle.
It's funny, most people have come on and had a little bit of a music story. Everyone's talked about music or having someone come in or getting the glockenspiels out. And were you mainly year 6 though?
Yeah, I was when I returned. Before that I taught every year group except for reception, but mainly my career's been in Key Stage 2, and then when I went back in year 6, and once you're a year 6 teacher, it seems that no one volunteers to take your place and you stay there. Yeah,
if you're a good year 6 teacher, yes, you're in there, aren't you, for life. Do you not regret never seeing reception?
I have taught reception on the odd occasion. I do remember doing a PE lesson for them, and after my warm-up they were all looking at me so tired. I thought, this isn't going to go to plan, and I had to think quickly on my think carefully on my plan and change everything.
I did used to like teaching PE, but mainly year 1. There was a lot of walking around the room to different types of music and stopping. I used to like the dance ones better. I know a lot more of what I was doing was throwing, catching, early ball games, that kind of thing. I never had to deal with the Key Stage 2 PE.
Oh, well.
Never got them out on the field. We never went out on a field or anything. So, like you said, your kind of then passion then started with getting children active. So are they the key principles then behind what you've set up then with Teach Active?
Yeah, so I going back to that year 6 class, I remember them. I did a questionnaire to learning. They absolutely loved being active,
Yeah.
and their least favourite subject was maths. So what I started doing is teaching a lot of active maths. Started taking learning outside and into the hall, and just getting children up and about and doing a lot of that. It wasn't through PE, because sometimes that puts people off the thought of more PE. It was just through that practical, that kinesthetic, that playing through games and play, and rather than necessarily being sat down and sedentary. And what I found is that actually it really helped children to enjoy the subject more. And then, of course, as confidence and attitudes grow, then attainment does as well. And and then, of course, that started with maths, and then it moved on to English as well. And how can we make grammar more exciting?
Yeah, how can we? We could have a whole podcast on how can we make grammar more exciting. But they're kind of principles that you would see in early years as well. And like I said, in teaching in year 1, I used to love when it got to springtime, because you could get back out and about, the big chalks, doing your maths outside, running around collecting things to kind of sort and count and label and all of that. But as children get older, we do tend to sit them down even more.
And a lot of people say that to me, I'm not sure I can do this, John, I'm a year 6 teacher. And I say, well, that's where it began for me. And children still love to learn through that way. And, I think more and more schools are seeing that now. And, the curriculum is so packed that can make it a challenge, and maybe the pressures on teachers. But I think teachers love doing it. They love it, and they go, gosh, John, I used to do loads of this. And actually, maybe it's just thinking, is there still space, and is there time to do that? And you're not wasting learning. Actually, children are learning and retaining information better through learning through this approach. And
you've got to have senior leadership buy-in there as well, don't you? Because one of the things people worry about is, well, I have done my maths, but I haven't got anything in the books. So you have to have that buy-in that, like you said, that learning is taking place. And I suppose the curriculum's packed at the moment, but I think we're all hoping that it will get a bit, some things shaved off a little bit with the curriculum review. So that might help as well. But it's SATs, isn't it, that people worry about in year 6?
Yeah, and as I said, with us, our SATs results, jumped and flew through the roof, and active maths and active English was a big part of that. And now the schools that I work with, and it's not just in terms of active kids, it's actually about them enjoying the lessons more, but attaining better as well. And then when we can see that, and the work and the research that we do with Loughborough University as well, and we're evidencing that to schools, actually, as you say, that helps get the SLT buy-in.
Get that buy-in. I used to do it before I, left and came to the literacy company. So I used to do it in my school with my year 1 class. And there were some great activities. I used to like them. I'll be honest, I used to try and choose the ones that had the least amount of prep. Yeah. As soon as there was a massive long list of equipment I needed, I maybe thought, maybe not. But I know that's something you're really mindful of, that teachers haven't got the time to get loads of stuff. Yeah,
I think that's why, obviously we deliver a lot of CPD and a lot of teacher training on the benefits of active children, active schools, and active lessons. But our resources that we provide schools with, we're really mindful of that. And listening to feedback exactly like that. Sometimes I want a game that needs resources, and sometimes I want one that doesn't need resources. And when we talk about resources, we're not talking about balls and hoops and cones. We're talking about maths and English resources, I suppose. And then other times it's lovely and sunny outside. Other times it's raining. The hall's not, free. So it just has to be bums off seats, non-sedentary behaviour in the classroom.
Just that movement. Yeah, there were some great ones that, yes, you could do in the classroom that had them moving. I obviously did a lot of number bonds and things like that, and counting in twos and that. But yeah, there's nothing worse than wanting to go and do it, going to that PE cupboard and realising that there's only 3 balls that are inflated. The ones that you want are not ready. But that was a good point, that we used to do that. Everyone had a hall active maths slot. So it was actually put in the timetable that you had your, one day a week or one morning a week. That was your slot for active maths in the hall.
Yeah, and I think a lot of schools do that. They will timetable it in. But just schools are they're all so different, aren't they?
Yes.
I was working with a school, and John, we haven't got a field, we've hardly got any playground space, and for them it was they had to look at the active lessons inside and in the space, where others. It's and actually schools maybe internationally have got the sun as well, so they can be out and about a lot more than maybe us in the UK.
That's a good point. Although sometimes it's then too hot and they don't go out at all. Yeah. But people can be scared, can't they, a little bit, or apprehensive of getting the children up and about, because drama's my passion and my background, and I would always be right, let's chairs away, let's get up, let's do this. But a lot of people are worried that once you start doing that, you might lose behaviour, I suppose, and that lack of control.
Yeah, I think I always say to people, the first time you do an activity like this, the children might be a bit high as a kite and a bit excited, and you might think, oof, but don't give up, persist and try again, and do it again. The children will be maybe get used to that fact that, we're not always sitting down for these lessons, and what we do actually find is that schools report back that it's helping behaviour, it's helping focus, it's helping concentration, as well as a lot of mainstream schools we work with, a lot of PRUs, for example, and alternative provision, where actually these children, we need to engage them in a different way, and active lessons and active learning helps, and using that love of movement that children have naturally.
And I think we've got a lot at the moment, haven't we, about iPads and putting children in front of screens, and and again, I've done this. A lot of online maths games are used, aren't they? But it's just children sitting again. So the alternative is put those away. Don't have as much screen time and get up and about.
Yeah, and they say primary school children now is 5 hours plus on average a day. And we can't, get away from that, and we embrace it. And, I use technology like we all do, but it's just trying to get the balance right. And it's if we have, as is reportedly the least active generation of children that have ever lived, we've got to get it to swing back in the other direction a little bit and think, how can we get them more active? And active lessons is one of many things, brilliant things that teachers are doing.
Yeah, and because humans and children haven't changed, it's society that's changing, isn't it? So that's why I suppose we can look at putting it back in and modelling it, and we can craft that for them. Yeah. We mentioned the maths, but obviously we are an English company, and you did bring along the English a bit later on, didn't you? I say a bit later on, but it's been a good few years now, hasn't it?
Yeah, so 2019 is when we launched that to our schools. And I think we started with maths, and as schools came back and said, well, this is brilliant and we love it, but what about English? What about reading? What about grammar? So, of course, I came and met with you, Sean, and
yes,
I didn't want it to be a tedious link. I wanted to think, is this something that's got legs? Is it something that you feel that would be powerful? I don't want it to be just airy-fairy and all good fun. Can children learn through their literacy through this approach? And of course, you and Alison and Linda and Kathy all said, I think we can. The rest is history. Well, it took us a while because quality takes time, and we wrote a lot of plans and started with all the writing, and then the reading followed, and now schools use it and enjoy it. And I was in a school in Bury last week filming a couple of active English lessons.
Oh, well, you have to share that with us then. We'd love to see that. No, it was once we'd kind of worked out how to map it out and how to sort the objectives, because you've got it really nicely laid out for the maths, hadn't you? And really intuitive for teachers, and really easy to navigate what I want to work with. That we wanted to make sure that we did that the same with the English. And some things did just really naturally, like you said, the grammar lend itself to getting children up and about. So it was great to collaborate and work on that. And then, as with everything, we all do this because we believe in education, don't we? We want to make the best for the children. So it's great to see that it is working. Yeah,
it is, and it's great to get the feedback off the schools. And I think the key to that is working with, I'll give you a compliment here now. Working with great partners, and that's it. I'm not, I'm a primary school teacher, so we all wear many hats, but I'm not an English or literacy specialist. So I wanted to work with you guys to make sure that we were giving our schools the best resources, and as you say, easy to find, and you can even use our AI lesson assistant to find it even quicker now, Sean.
I was going to ask you about your AI lesson assistant, as you've given me a little bit of a demo. So you're going to have to explain it a bit more now then.
Yeah, so anyone who's ever used Teach Active, you can just search by a year group, an area of English literacy, for example. But what you can do now is simply type into the AI search or the lesson planner. For example, you want a year 3 game to support you with your reading or a particular area of grammar. So
speech marks, there you go. That's a year 3 one.
There you go.
Marks.
We could say year 3 speech marks, and it will find you a game. You could also ask it to plan you a 6-week intervention program to teach children all about X or Y, Z, whatever it may be, and it will plan all of that for you as well. And you can ask it to search for games that might be indoor, outdoor, need resources, don't need resources. Yeah. So it's just a very good posh search facility, I suppose, but rather than looking through the whole of the internet, it's just looking through our quality assured plans.
So you can keep that quality assurance, and also though it's that slight time saving, isn't it, for teachers? So they're still using it, but you're just guiding them a little bit more. But like you said about partnerships, I think we really value partnerships with people as well, and I don't know whether I've chatted about it before, but when we go to shows and conferences, there's actually a really nice feeling amongst education companies, isn't there? Yeah. People genuinely want to help each other out because we've all got a very similar educational goal as well. So the other thing I was going to ask you about was obviously the curriculum and assessment review. Yeah. We've gone through it countless times, and obviously we're waiting in the summer for the first revision. Do you think are you seeing many implications for either the PE or the maths side, or?
Well, initial thoughts, I think that the first thing that everyone kind of recognises is that the curriculum's too packed at the moment, and I get that a lot of teachers to think, John, I love this idea, but where does it go? How do I squeeze it in? And there's so much pressure on them. So I welcome that, because hopefully it'll give more freedom for that type of things, and to do things more in depth and properly, rather than thinking I've got to rush through and get through everything. And
they're all the things that we used to love, isn't it? That having that time and space to do things with your class.
Yeah, exactly that. Obviously I think that this recognition that it's not one size that fits all, and we've got more neurodiverse and SEN needs than ever before, and again, I think in terms of the active lessons, it really lends itself well to that. I was at a head teachers conference a few weeks ago, and there was a gentleman talking, a consultant with neuroscientist, and talking about how perhaps with children with ADHD or whatever neurodiverse need they might have, then our need to embrace their love of movement as well. Yes. And then I suppose the third one is maybe the oracy, that idea. I think that's just so important. And again, I think active learning really supports that, and a lot of the peer-to-peer work that we encourage through active lessons as well. So, but there's I think teachers probably still feel there's too much pressure on them in terms of tests, and too heavily on assessment, and so we'll have to wait and see with that one.
Yeah, wait and see. But I suppose we have got a big focus on SEND, haven't we, at the moment, again with the white paper coming out, and ensuring that we are providing for all children. And some of the things you're talking about, one thing that's is in my mind from training I've had before is what's essential for one isn't going to harm everyone else. Yeah. So it's about thinking about those things. It's essential for those children, but everyone's going to benefit from getting up and about. And also that when you said about like the spoken language side, lots of people are saying their children post-COVID it is, and now it's more the communication that they're struggling with, communicating with their peers, that sharing element, that working together. So I'm presuming a lot of the things that they could be doing through this builds those skills as well.
Yeah, I think when we I talk about four main benefits. There's loads, but I think about four main ones. One of them is getting children more active in the health benefits that has. So we're doing projects with public health, because we know that children are inactive and the implications that has. Others, it's about attitudes and attainment, and what neuroscientists and psychologists will tell you about how it supports the learning journey and retention and memory and of learning that children have. And also teachers obviously feeding that back as well in the case studies and testimonials. But then that final thing is that whole child development, that those wider holistic things, which as a teacher, that's why we became a teacher, resilience, determination, social skills, speaking and listening skills, all of those things are so important to children. And I think again, this active approach, the movement-based curriculum, sometimes people prefer that kind of wording, if you like, that really brings it out in children.
And we're learning so much generally about health, aren't we? And we're learning even like in offices, we're now talking about people standing up, people moving around, having little treadmills under your desk. So these things that they're good for us generally, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. And when I've got a watch on now which will tell me how many steps I've done. But when I was a child, I didn't need that. But I'll tell you, I was smashing over 10,000 out of the park every day. And so what we want to do is, rather than have movement as an add-on, let's all go and do this or go and do that, let's try and just make it a natural part of the school day. And rather than saying, does maths and English have to be sat down? Sometimes it does, and of course it does, but it doesn't always have to be like that. And maybe we look for to the early years or the Scandinavian countries and look at the way that they do it and think, actually, if children are happier and prefer that way, and actually they can learn just as well, or if not even stronger through that approach, then let's embrace it more.
Because I've started to think, the more I do hear about teachers struggling with children's behaviour and they can't sit still, they can't do this, and you start to feel like, are we trying to put a square peg into a round hole? Are we still trying to get children of today to have like an education like we had? Or maybe not us, going even further, because I'm a child of the 80s, so I was out doing pastel paintings of things. I was very artistic. We didn't do an awful lot of formal learning in an 80s primary school, but are we not moving with the times?
Yeah, so I think people often, I talk to people about, why do children learn in a particular way, or why do we sit them down? Is it because it's better for their concentration, their memory? Is it because they learn better that way? Is it because it's better for their behaviour? But actually it's not. So
No.
we persist and we maybe do that. It's why it's really interesting, some of the work that we're doing with initial teacher training and with those teachers coming in to their early careers, and again, when I was at school, I was a similar age to you, Sean.
Actually, we've had this conversation. Very similar age to me.
Yeah, I think people say to me, someone said to me recently, I bet you loved maths at school. And I said, no, I hated maths at school because they made me sit down, which I didn't like to do. And they made me do it in this particular way. And that wasn't for me. And I am someone who would have needed this.
Yeah, I was given the book. You had like the textbooks. Mm-hmm. I was given a book with 3 or 4 others, and we were sent into the art. Yeah, you go over there and you do this. Yeah. I remember learning times tables. I remember learning calligraphy, handwriting.
Oh right.
Yeah, don't remember much else really. But it's that Victorian way of sitting, isn't it? But it's interesting that doing the stuff with the trainee teachers, because they're going to have to then be really brave, aren't they? It's going to take a lot of bravery to say, when you first get that voice and say, no, I'm doing this because this is right for my class. I've heard of some people, again, Key Stage 2, who have done away with chairs and that formality and letting children decide. And if for that child it is better for them to stand up and write, or, and they're getting their work done and they're not feeling uncomfortable sat down, then let's lean into that.
Yeah, and it goes back to depending on who the head and who the SLT is and what they believe. I was working with 2 teachers recently, both brilliant, but one of them said to me, John, I love this idea, but I can't do it in my school because we all have to do it in a particular way, and this doesn't this isn't it. Where the girl who was next to her, who was maybe school was 2 miles down the road, said, "Oh, we do loads of this already. Active lessons, forest school, movement. We do lots of this. Yeah, I absolutely love this, and I'm going to go and take it back to school." So it's interesting that that's two schools exactly the same. But if you're a child in that local area, your experience of going from school A to school B might be very different because of maybe the beliefs. So trying to spread that message is really important, I think.
Yeah, that's why you need it to come from like on high, don't you, and filter it down. So before we kind of finish and wrap up, have you got any top tips then? You've mentioned lots of things, but just to kind of summarise, if people want to get their children moving more, and like you said, not an add-on, just naturally, what are your top tips?
Well, my top tips would be for schools in general that rather than trying to do more, just do what you're already doing, which is teaching, obviously, for example, English and maths. English and maths are the most inactive part of the school day. They don't need to be. You can introduce movement naturally into them and getting children up and about, just like we've done Kagan structures and learn to learn. Now let's get them moving. And through that way, it's going to be really sustainable and impactful. And children will not only be more active, they'll have a big smile on their face, they'll enjoy it, it'll support literacy, and it'll help attainment, and it'll help that sticky learning and that mastery as well. So that's probably just one big tip.
One big tip.
Yes.
But that big smile on the face, I've seen your insets put a big smile on like the staff faces as well. I've seen some of the videos and the stuff you've done, because everyone loves getting up and doing something and being a bit active. They might moan at first, but once they're up and about, they sit down with a smile on their face. So finally then, we like to kind of chat. Obviously, we are the literacy company and chat about books. Do you have any memories of a favourite book, either as a child or one that you've taught with your class? Year 6 teachers generally have a favourite book that they used to do. Have you got one?
Well, I've got a book that I think, listening to your previous podcasts that you've done and what you've spoken about, and in one episode early on, you and Alison are talking about the importance of that kind of class book and reading with your class. Yeah. And I was a typical, I'm sure if I'm allowed to say it, typical, I didn't like reading as a kid.
I think that's fine.
I wasn't a fan. And then my year 6 teacher read me a book, or the class a book, and I absolutely loved it. And it was Danny, the Champion of the World.
Oh, no, that's a good one. And
I absolutely loved it. And I just remember at the end of the day, we'd all go and sit on the carpet and we'd all listen to a little bit of Danny, the Champion of the World. And for me, that was the first book where I actually, just maybe fell in love a bit with a book and with reading. And before, I probably hadn't had that, which... it took me a while. My mum used to read to me, and my dad said, my mum and dad are both primary school teachers, so they were probably pulling their hair out with me. But that was the book that probably I have the fondest memory of.
Oh, that's lovely. And it is a bit like when Alison and I were talking, they're not overly complicated. Some of the books that we all remember and love, they're not maybe as complicated as some that we have now. It was accessible to you, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So I definitely agree with that. Reading with the class.
Reading with the class, a little bit at the end of the day, that drip by drip, chapter at a time, and that just, so thank you ever so much for coming on. Before we officially wrap this up, is there anything else that you wanted to add or tell us about, maybe how people can find out more about Teach Active?
Yeah, of course. So in terms of Teach Active, it's Google search and you will find us and go to the website there, and then hopefully you can drop us a message. But there's also some free plans there, so you can have a go at some active maths and active English, written by the literacy company themselves, and have a go and see if your class do enjoy them, and I hope they do, and it'd be good to get some feedback off your listeners in terms of their class as well. Oh no, that's brilliant. And thank you also for supporting us so much with this podcast as well, for listening to it and agreeing to come on. I think we've actually done really well, because knowing how we chat, I thought this might go on and be like our first hour-long episode, but we've done really well. So thank you very much. Oh, thank you. Thanks for inviting me on.